think you ought to know about Men's Radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's Men's Radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. Men's Radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
With who? With who? Hi, everybody. Russ Kane here. This is The Daily Show, Friday edition, here on Men's Radio Station, part of the Sound Mind Radio Group. And I got to tell you, you'll be pleased, and then even better news. Good news, and then better news. Good news. No Phil Dave today, at all. Mr. Murdoch needs him. Mr. Murdoch requires his technical and cerebral input. Great news. Great news. A full hour of the pulchritudinous, the highly intellectual, the brilliantly connected, the always insightful. She has an OBE. She is Chantal Rickards. Wow.
Dear God, I can't live up to that, as you
you
well.
really can. Really. Look, face it, you're only replacing Phil. That's, how difficult could that be?
Oh, you're not nice about Phil. We're not going to have a beat-up Phil day. It's not fair.
We are. Every day is a beat-up Phil day. Every day is a beat-up Phil day. What's the point of having him as one of your best pals if you can't beat him up? That's what I say. Let's see what comments we got. We got good day from a rainy day in Cambridge, Massachusetts, says Azadon Brown. Doesn't talk like that, but I think if you're going to wear a Stetson, you got to have that accent. I mean, to be honest.
Indeed.
It says even more good news. I'm here, be it only a Friday. Sorry, life's happening. Well, Emma, the time to worry is when life isn't happening, because then you're probably dead. Then we've got Dave Sleet, the wonderful Dave Sleet. Have you ever met Dave Sleet?
I don't think so.
No,
I'd like to.
We should redress that. He is one of the nicest and most intellectual people you'll ever meet. He's quite extraordinary the way his mind works. Somebody no relation to Phil Dave, Linda Dave. What a coincidence. Hi to you both.
Funny that.
What have we got? Graham Pack. Having Ebony. It's so rude. It's a step up from Phil. It is just so rude. Then Facebook, what a pretty frock. And Chantal's dress is nice too. I bet that's Lloyd. If Lloyd Beanie knows you're on for an hour, he will cancel. I am not joking you. He will cancel all his plans. You think I'm actually kidding? I'm not.
Oh,
What kind of a week have you had, Chantal?
I've had a pretty good week. Well, my week, it depends on when the week starts, but whether it was either Sunday or Monday, I was bobbing up and down in the Ionian Ocean, or Ionian Sea, which is slightly more easy to say.
Where is that? I have no idea.
I was sailing between on a boat with sails. I was sailing between Paxos and the Greek mainland.
Isn't that a chicken stuffing? No, it's Paxo. Sorry.
God,
your fan base, not only is Beanie now glued for an entire hour, then I'll get a phone call at 1:01. When am I going to meet? You're not going to meet her because I can't trust you. I can't trust you. She's a wonderful friend. I do love some bobbing up and down. Shut up. That is Beanie. And Dave Sleet, normally Mr. Intellectual, says, Lloyd isn't the only one. Yeah, all right. So there you go. You have a huge fan base. A huge fan. Well, they don't get out. I mean, Dave Sleet stuck up normally in Fife in Scotland on the coast. With only a seagull and his mum for company, the lovely Sue Sleet, who's been looking after him. They've been looking after each other. Neither of them have been well, so bless them. It's a wonderful thing that they're both here with us. And Lloyd is not allowed out because of the ankle tag. So you're on the Paxos Chicken Stuffing Sea on a sailing boat.
I was on the high sea on a sailing boat with 3 friends, and we were just sort of bobbing around and minding our own business, and then just going into different little ports and villages every night and mooring up and sleeping on the boat, and it was just idyllic. There was one day of high winds, and I got a little bit nervous, and I'm not great in big winds and lumpy seas, but otherwise it was perfect. It's perfect.
The Serpentine's my limit. That's about it. I can kind of cope with that after a couple of minutes. I've had enough.
Well, I think now did you have
to hoist the main? Did you have to do all that and hoisting and splicing the mizzen?
Hoisting the mainsail and slinging out ropes right, left, and centre, and hoisting anchors, and it was great fun. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't in control, so that's okay. Somebody else was.
Thank God, because you'd now be somewhere just off the Tasmanian coast. That's my fear. I've absolutely no desire to do.
No, navigation is not my thing.
It's an interesting thing, but when people have boats and they go, "Please come on my boat," and I did this in America. A friend of mine said, "I got a boat. Why don't you come on my boat?" When I was living over there, and I did. And the moment he stepped on board, Chantal, he became a different guy. I'm suddenly on the boat with Captain Bloody Bligh. He was absolutely horrendous. And this was like a big kind of racing, but he took it very, very. I'm thinking I'm going to have a few beers, have a sandwich, chomp on a cigar. I'm going to be fine. No. Oh, no. I'm like a full-fledged crewman. And he's yelling instructions. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've never been on a sailboat before.
Yeah. No, people behave very strangely. I had a flatmate who I lived with very happily for 3 years until we went on a boat together. And I've never been shouted at so much in my life.
This was it. He was barking orders. And Lloyd and I had a late friend, a much, much missed friend, a lovely man who just dropped dead, completely unexpected, called Alan Rose. Nice man, a huge personality. And he had a boat. And I never went on it. It was one of the things we got to go. I never did. And I got to tell you, boy, when he went on the boat, he became a dumb guy again, apparently. Facebook user, this is Beanie, by the way. Quick, get some voiceover work while your voice rivals Morgan Freeman's. I know. It's just, when I get a cold, it goes straight to my throat.
It's a very nice, gravelly voice today.
At a cinema near you, it was a time of war. It was a time of danger when one man could make a difference. All that nonsense, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
There you go. You're very kind. You're very, very kind. Well, there's tons to unpack. And I didn't say I was going to discuss this with you, but we are going to discuss this with you. This has been a brutal week in the media. Brutal.
Yeah.
And as with everything, of course, social media leading the charge, news trailing way behind social media as per usual. And I'd love your take on it. I mean, you've got your pulse. You'll say you haven't, but you're so well connected. It is your métier after all, and any other French food you care to mention. And I think the thing is, Paul, see, here we go straight away. Chantal not striking. No. This is audio and radio. We're not acting. We're not acting, and there's no script. So we're not. No, we're not. We're not. What do we got? Chantal is from BAFTA, but you're from Daft.
Very good.
You would think that Graham Pack actually has a very senior, sensible job. Well, he's like, do a voiceover, War of the World. No one would believe that we were being observed from across the planet, whatever it was. Yeah. Okay, here's one. It's been a brutal week. Let's get down to it. And which has seen the absolute massacring of Hugh Edwards. And of course, as you will have seen, public opinion, the court of public opinion, split into two.
Yeah.
Essentially in these, and if you disagree, which you always have done with me over many, many years, please correct me. I stand to be corrected. This is just my take on it.
Okay.
One hand is, it's absolutely none of our business. He's done nothing illegal. Shut up. Stop being disgusting. The other is, wait a minute. He is the United Kingdom's premier newscaster who handled and was given the honor of her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's funeral and announcing her death. It doesn't get any bigger than that. A momentous occasion in the 21st century, one will always remember.
Yeah.
I was watching an interview with Kelvin MacKenzie, a man who terrifies the hell out of me, to be perfectly honest. I've never met him, but he scares me to death. I'm sure you've met him many times.
Actually, I haven't met Kelvin,
Oh.
but certainly, well, I have met him many years ago, but not in the last couple of decades.
Oh,
but
he's a scary guy, but
Yeah.
a very knowledgeable guy. Whether you like him or not, it's irrelevant. He's a very knowledgeable. And he said, it's ridiculous. People are saying he's going to come back to work. Hugh Edwards. How can he? And I'm only quoting Kelvin MacKenzie, not as an excuse, but I think he was right. He's saying he can't sit there announcing, and in NATO, war has broken out between France and Belgium. And you're going to be sitting there going, I can't take you seriously now.
Yeah.
You've lost that position. Am I right, or am I being very...
No, I think you're right about that. And in many ways, I don't think he'll want to, because I don't think he started out by thinking, oh, I'm going to bring discredit on the BBC and I'm going to make a laughing stock of British people who watch me on television. I don't think that's it. That's his shtick. I mean, I think he's unwell. And I think, we are a channel that talks about mental instability.
Yes, I want to come on to that. Yes, I do.
Very aware of everybody who is in part of this horrendous story, that there are, kids and brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers who are all impacted in just a horrible, horrible way. And really, Hugh is struggling. I mean, I knew about it last Saturday. It was interesting that The Sun clearly didn't release his name, but in releasing the story, they knew that his name would come out.
Yeah.
Because I literally knew within about 4 or 5 hours. I didn't repeat it, and clearly I was not in a position.
So basically, you're saying you're a lousy friend.
Probably lousy friend. Yes. But actually, I didn't believe it when I heard it. I simply didn't believe it. I thought,
if you had to pick the most unlikely person on the planet, it would not be him, because I looked up to him in as much as I admired his gravitas. I admired the way he presented information. I really did, in a non-hysterical way, the sort of way that I grew up and you grew up and most of our viewers and listeners grew up with, just a newscaster giving you the information without their stupid interpretation of it, which we don't need. Quite honestly, we don't need that. Now here's Paul. You see, Paul Andrews taking a completely different view, and there's no right or wrong in this. It just is what it is. And Paul's saying this: he's the United Kingdom's premier broadcaster. He is, who's done nothing illegal. We'll come back to that if we may. I want to discuss it with you, Chantal.
Yeah.
His kinks, as of anyone's, that's true, not our business. Glass houses, Kelvin, well, we're going to come on to that in a big time. And then Paul says this, he's doubling down. Impacted in a horrible way because the junk paper, the #1 newspaper in the United Kingdom, whether you like it or not, it just is, reported tittle-tattle. What's next? BBC's to release personal browser histories. Well, there's a lot to unpack that's to do with mental health.
Yeah.
How did you feel when his wife, who has my deepest, and the children, God almighty, I mean, nightmare. You couldn't imagine really much worse of a nightmare. And suddenly it's mental health. Now, two ways of looking at this. I did a whole piece on Talk TV this week, and I said, look, I'm a co-founder of a radio station and director of another one. We specialize in mental health and well-being. That's why you joined us, because you believe in our cause, the one that Howard and myself and Penny had.
Absolutely.
And you believe it, and you've been so supportive, and bless you for it. So I said, I'm not going to make light of it, and I'm not going to make, light-hearted comments about mental health, etc., because I shouldn't do that. Maybe as a personal person, but not as a director and co-founder. I can't do that. How did you feel when you heard what the naysayers are saying? Oh, they're playing the mental health card.
Yeah, well, that's outrageous. That's the sort of thing that makes me wild with anger.
There you go.
It's not fair. I mean, we are all, one bad day away from having a mental health crisis, frankly. And I think we should be aware of people's fragility and very, very empathic if we can possibly be so. That's exactly what this channel's all about. And I felt genuinely sorry for everybody involved. Everybody involved. There are no winners in this other than the people, Canton group, in terms of, how many readers they had for the Sun. And clearly they will see that they release this neutron bomb into the atmosphere, and clearly it got picked up by everybody, and then they suddenly sort of backed away and now sort of pretending as though, well, this has got nothing to do with them any longer. I mean, I think the Sun should really think about the stories that it puts out there, especially when they haven't yet put the opposing view of the young man who then said, actually, this is all bunkum. The Sun didn't report that. And you think, hang on a second, you're either going to report this properly or you're not going to report it at all.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they should have reported it. I think there should have been an internal investigation. And if it was found that there was wrongdoing, then the BBC should have spoken to their member of staff and said, your behaviour doesn't stack up at the moment. You need to get help. But
you've worked in the media. You've worked in the media for many, many years. It's your bread and butter. You know it far better than 99% of our viewers. Certainly know it better than I do, or even Phil does. And here's the thing: how could a corporation that we pay for our money, which I think is grossly unfair, but that's for another day, let all this speculation affect their own staff? Because the wild speculation, while they were doing nothing and hoping it would all go away, these things never just all go away. You got to deal with it.
Yeah.
They let some terrible stuff happen to some of their stars. I don't like the word stars. Some of their employees, some of their presenters, call them what you will. All right. Who will take defamation action if they can trace the IP addresses? And so they should. So they should. There was some ghastly crap out there. It was horrible. But that's not good management, is it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, an organization that employs 22,000 people is going to have people of all different shapes and sizes that, with all different types of mental makeup that are going to come together. And some are going to behave strangely and some are going to behave, neurotypically. And that's not their fault. What I do think is problematic, and most people just don't talk about it, particularly in the way that I talk about it, is I think that fame is corrosive. I think fame does really bad things to one's psyche, and I don't think it is something that you should strive for. And I think that the downside of being on television is that you are vulnerable, you are public property, and anything you do will be scrutinized. And I just think that's a hideous way to be, frankly. I think the BBC generally are very good at human resources, at people and culture, as they call it these days. Yeah.
Really?
Okay. I felt very protected as an employee. There was somebody I could talk to any time of the day or night about anything, pretty much.
Okay.
I didn't feel as though I was ever in a situation where I was under-regarded or bullied or any of those things. I think the BBC did it in spades. They were so good.
Okay. We see, that's so fascinating. That's why I'm thrilled you're on, because we never hear that side of the coin.
Yeah.
My working with the BBC has been on their radio, and neither here nor there. And when it did kick off, I got them to give me a formal apology live on air. I wasn't going to let it go, because I think me, and I just wouldn't. Something was said in a studio live on air. I was not going to let it pass. It was outrageous, and I don't think those people work there again. Quite rightly so. You can't do that. Let's see what Dave Sleep. But Julie Voice is agreeing you. She's not waiting for her mum outside the Bowls Club, which is great. Julie Voice was in Houston, Texas, by the way, Chantal, in case you don't, because this is like a Monday, Wednesday thing. Now she lives in Guildford. Like Houston, Texas, Guildford. And she's really an Uber driver now for her mum, who God knows how old her mum is. And her mum plays bowls, and she has to sit outside the Bowls Club every Monday or Wednesday, picking up her mum, bless her. Dave Sleet, who is, if you have, please look up Dave Sleet. I don't mean you, Chantal, but you know who he is. But everybody, look him up. Look up his organization. The work Dave Sleet and his team do is absolute. Boy, are they punching above their weight. They're just terrific people. My first thought is that the way this has been handled means the truth will never be known. and the public will never accept a formal statement. Well, this is a problem, isn't it? Due process has not been followed, and gossip journalists acting on an allegation from third parties. Well, absolutely so. Now, disagreeing. Paul Andrews, fame just means the public assume you're fair game. Interesting. And I see a diametrically opposite opinion to your experience of being there. Graham Pack, who's a pretty senior, grown-up guy, I have to tell you. The BBC have been competent in the way they dealt with this from day one. 96 next week. Bloody hell. Isn't that great? She's playing... Julie, you're like...
Wow.
Isn't that great?
Good for her.
96.
That's fantastic.
Holy moly. That is bloody marvellous. My kids were seeing that. They were going, oh, God, no. No.
I think that's
not more decades of him, please. What is our fascination with this sort of ghastly hubris? It's a Greek tragedy, isn't it? I mean, I said on Talk TV, I said, this is like a Shakespearean tragedy. It's so awful. A man of, if I say greatness, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know him personally. I've never met him. I don't know the man. He's a total stranger to me. He's somebody on my TV screen. But a man, brought down so desperately low.
Yeah, I know.
It is Shakespearean.
It is completely Shakespearean, and it does worry me that we get very energized by these sorts of stories, and we spend enormous amounts of time dissecting them. When something, if this happened to your, a cousin or a relation or somebody or your best friend, you actually wouldn't want it shared with everybody.
I tell you, the nearest has come to me was someone who is a friend, Neil Fox, who I worked with for many years at Capital Radio. And Neil had a terrible time. Now, I know Neil. I've known him for many, many years. And in my heart, I knew that these allegations were nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Ridiculous. And his life was destroyed. But what was interesting about that is the first people to come forward were all the women that he'd worked with. One who flew in from California, from LA, to be witnesses and say, no, this is not the Neil that we know. And he's a very, very nice man. And none of it was true. None of it. And it destroyed him. There was no support from his employer, who I will name, Bauer, who fired him on the spot without nothing. Never. And when he was all proved to be nonsense, they never took him back. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is showbiz. It's interesting. Now, here's another view. Would you like to read this, Chantal?
Right, I'll have to look down here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, if it's a problem, don't worry.
As a freelancer, I felt alienated and isolated working for the BBC. Their overriding concern, in my opinion, is for middle management job security and for their biggest stars. Well, I have to say that's fascinating. I don't know how freelancers were treated versus how staff were treated, but I was on staff at the BBC, and I'm really sorry to hear that. But sometimes things are not as good as they should be, and the BBC should be better than most other people. And clearly, poor old Scotty feels let down, which is sad.
He does. I love this. Going back to Julie Voice and her driving duties for a 96-year-old mum. I take my 22-month-old granddaughter to her nursery every Tuesday morning. My daughter calls me Papa Uber.
Oh, sweet. Lovely.
Now, here's a very interesting point from Paul Andrews.
Okay.
And Paul Andrews has had a very interesting life himself. Well, what's he actually done? What's he actually done? By current accounts, swap some naughty pictures with the other consenting adults. And, says Paul Andrews, is there a line which public figures with certain responsibilities cannot cross, or are we setting that pillar far too high and we should stop being silly and say, well, so what? Where do you stand? Because I'm confused.
Well, it depends on where you stand on public morals, and that, one could spend years at university studying philosophy and morality and not come up with an answer about that. I mean, I think we all know roughly what we accept and what we don't accept, and there are you know, shades of grey, no pun intended with all of those things.
Yeah. There's 50 of them.
One has to try and stick to a limit that most people find acceptable. And that's the balancing act for anybody. Now, clearly, I don't think he will come back to public life. I think the brand is broken, as they would say. I think he would be too toxic for the BBC, and it would feel very odd. Because it's very difficult once you know all that stuff. It's like you can't unknow it. Once you know it, you can't unknow it.
You can't unsee it is the problem. You can't unsee it in your mind. And you've got a brilliant phrase. You say the brand is broken. You know, how can you give us important news when you're thinking X, Y, and Z? Yeah. It's not that it's illegal. It was unwise. But all of us, and I'm the first to put my hand up, have done very, very, very unwise things. Dave Sleet says this: curtain twitchers and keyboard warriors being given a free rein to say what they want without consequences. I don't, yes and no, because the people, and I'm not going to name names, who were put in the frame before the BBC deigned to throw Hugh under the bus, so to speak, or reveal his name, put it in neutral terms. I think they will take legal action. I think they should, actually. But of course, it's very dirty the way it's done, Chantal, as you know, because they'll put a picture of call it Fred Smith. I don't want to get into any more hot water. They put a picture of Fred Smith up. The article doesn't refer to Fred Smith and just speculates who it might be. What conclusion are you meant to draw? Yeah. What are you meant to do? You're meant to draw, well, they've got a big picture of Fred Smith up there. It must be him.
But in the old days, part of this, Russ, is because the privacy laws have changed. So in the old days, the rags might have put his name in the frame straight away. But because privacy laws have been tightened, what they now do is they dangle the story without naming somebody, knowing that because of social media, that name will come out. So they throw in the bomb and then they let it explode outside their boundary walls.
They throw the grenade into the room and bugger off is what they do, in fact. This is interesting. Paul Andrews is John Leslie Part 2. Well, there were two John Leslies. One was exceptionally nice and charming, and you couldn't have dinner with a nicer guy, and the other wasn't. Let's leave it at that. Paul Andrews, I think he'll be back as a documentary maker. Oh, quite. Yes. You see, that makes sense. That makes sense. And hopefully on the way, sues the pants off. Yes, indeed. I don't think he will. I think he's going to have a problem suing anybody.
Well,
but there we are.
I was listening to David Yelland this morning, who was the former editor of The Sun. And he was saying that he absolutely believes that, not that he knows it and had no knowledge of it, but he felt that there would be a very good case for Hugh Edwards to take The Sun to court, because they had done everything but name him. And they had written the word child in the headline.
Yeah, they had, absolutely.
And you know, clearly it sounds as though laws or defamation laws may have been broken, but certainly Yelland felt that Hugh would be able to take them to court over it.
Here's the thing, and let's get down into the real world, not in the, I do this and I do that sort of stuff. You know, and I know, and many of the people who are very senior watching and listening to the show know, one of the most expensive and long-winded legal actions you can bring is a defamation case for slander or libel. You have to have a war chest, as I call it, kicking off at a bare minimum of £500,000. If you haven't got £500,000 kicking around, you can't bring this case. The way that the media works, I don't mean our little setup here, I mean the Murdoch media worth billions and billions, is they often take a view, okay, if we get sued, you know this, the Elton John case was a prime example. If we get sued, what's the maximum exposure? Let's say we get sued and we lose, we're told to pay £2 million. I'm picking numbers out of the air, doesn't matter. Let's say we get fined effectively £2 million. If we run the story, How many extra copies of our paper are we going to sell? Boom. And it's just maths. And if the number that the extra that they're going to sell with all this crap and tittle tattle and whatever, under the spurious title of "It's in the nation's interest," it's not really, is it?
Yeah.
Then it's maths. And if you come ahead, if the media company, I don't just mean the Sun, any media company comes ahead, they'll run it. They did that with Elton John. They printed a story which they knew wasn't true.
Yeah.
The paper's sales went through the roof. They lost the case, and they said, "Well, it was worth £1 million because our circulation shot up like a rocket." So,
yeah,
it's not a clean game. It's not a clean game. And let me just tell you, and I'm sure you know this, Chantal, there is another revelation that will come over the next few days that will completely overshadow this. This will be the third. As my mum used to say, these things always come in threes. First, we had Philip Schofield, who I have great sympathy for now. My opinion's changed, to be honest with you. I'm not saying he's the world's nicest guy. I don't know. I've never met him, but I think what happened to him was completely disproportionate. 2, we've had this case this week, and there will be next week. They'll pick it up, and it's ain't going to be pretty. It ain't going to be pretty at all. It's going to be quite nasty. Right. This is from Scott Lyons, who calls himself Fat Scotty. We don't call him that, Scott Lyons. I'm going to save you looking down, by the way. That's why, because I know it's a bit awkward. Scotty, up in Wolverhampton, he sees celebrities are nurtured and grown in a bubble. They don't live in the real world, and they're managed into a false sense of security. They can do whatever they want until it affects their management. Yeah, you're not far wrong. You're really not far wrong, you know. And coming in from the United States in a rainy Massachusetts, fame has a similar effect on the brain as narcotics and other vices. Oh, wow. Okay.
That's interesting.
Your brain becomes accustomed to all of that attention, that adoration, and all those eyes on you. It stimulates the reward center in the brain known as the nucleus accumbens. I bet I've mispronounced that horribly wrong. Nucleus accumbens? Oh, that's as good as it's going to get today. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've both mixed with people who are ridiculous. You far more than I. You've mixed with the biggest stars in the world. I mean, the biggest A-listers on the planet. But what is fascinating about you is you have remained, I'm going to say this, you'll get all embarrassed, but please take it, it's genuine. Despite all this, you haven't tried to gain any of that nonsense yourself. You're exactly the same person I've known. Or you're the same person that I've known all this years, which is why everyone who knows you adores you. But how many people do we know who are a PR to a major? I'm talking about a major star, not some twerp on TV here, or some game show or something like Hugh, or their PR, and they're obnoxious because they think they're famous. They're not. You're not famous if you're the PA to some rock star. You're not. You're just there. You're not.
No.
Stop it.
No,
Stop it. Stop it now.
Yeah, 1990s. I was asked to screen test for television, and I thought about it. Yeah. Well, I thought about it, and I turned it down, and I just thought, I don't want to go there. And by that stage, I was already a television producer anyway, and I thought, well, why would I want to go and be told what to do by somebody else when I've already got a job that's very satisfying where I can tell other people what to do? So I turned it down, and I'm very pleased that I did. The public eye is not something to be encouraged.
I don't like it. People say, well, that's ridiculous considering what you did for 20 years in your career. No, I wasn't interested. I liked the work. Yeah. I enjoyed the work. I didn't want all the other nonsense was okay, and I took it with a huge pinch of salt. The classic case for me was back when it was all going crazy. We had 4 million listeners a day and all of that. I was sitting at a dinner party back in the days when people had dinner parties. I was, back in the early 90s or something. I was sitting there, and in real life, I'm actually pretty quiet. I'm just sitting at the dinner table. I didn't know everybody. I was just eating and minding. And then halfway through the dinner, the people sitting opposite me, a couple of people who had really ignored me, realized who I was. And this transformation came over them. And I thought, screw you. I'm the same guy who's been sitting opposite you for an hour. You haven't spoken to me. You're not in the least bit interested. Oh, suddenly, you're the guy off the rail. Oh, and I thought that's pathetic, and which is why I never craved it. It never interested me. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. Now, this is very true. Another very nice man. The BBC dropped Paul Gambaccini like a ton of bricks when his false allegations came out. Yes, they did. And Paul Gambaccini was nearly destroyed by it. What a charming man. And he's still so angry about it. And so he should be. So he should be. It was awful.
Yeah.
As you said, explain to us who Mr. Yelland is again, please.
David Yelland used to be the editor of The Sun.
Wow. Okay.
About 20 years ago.
Okay.
And he's been in sort of PR management since then. He mainly advises high net worth individuals and, people of importance about how to present themselves in, publicly, as it were. So he's not a newspaper man any longer, but he was. And actually, he spoke very well on one of the podcasts that I listened to called The News Agents, which is
that's clever.
Interesting. It's good. It's a good title.
Speaking of podcasts, it's episode 3. Was it episode 4? Episode 3 or 4 of Walk the Talk dropped this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. You can find it on.
And how's it going?
Very nicely, thank you. Early days, but all the indications are that it's being well received. Slowly. I always take a very realistic look at these things, but you can get it. Myself and Mark Collin, Walk the Talk, The Hero's Journey. And it's on every platform where you get your podcast. Right, Dave Sleep back again. Warriors, not Warriors. Oh, Warrior. Oh, you did. I thought it was a typo. My apology to you, David. Are people shouting at the screen because they're overloaded by their fear? What are they fearful of? Do you think that's the mental attitude of it? They're scared. What are they scared of?
Don't know, but fear's a fascinating topic to talk about because most of us have a lot of fears, and actually how we cope with fear is a big part of one's mental robustness.
Absolutely right.
And fear's something you don't have to take on. If you repel it, then you don't absorb all that awfulness and angst. But some people are very fearful all the time, whether it's of opening the front door and going outside or relationships or whatever it may be. Fear's a really interesting topic to talk about.
We should do that. I'm thinking this. I think it's because their lives are pretty bloody empty. I'm not talking about the media pundits. That's their meat. This is like fuel to their engine. This is payday. This is the greatest thing that could happen for them because it gets clickbait, it sells papers, it gets viewers and all the rest of it. Okay, but I think people who are not, just ordinary just ordinary people, not in the media. I think a lot of the people, it's a distraction from the own inadequacies as they would see it. I'm not saying it is, as they would see the inadequacies of their own life.
Yeah, but if you think about fear politics, which particularly we've seen played out in America in the last 5 years, that Trump really won because of fear politics. It was about terrifying people that the America they thought they knew was disappearing, and therefore you had to hang on to and go back to great America. And that's basically how he ran his campaign for all of that time. So fear politics absolutely works. A lot of people would say that that's exactly what the Daily Mail do every day, which is they terrify the bejesus out of you, whether it's about, I know particularly being a woman, and I occasionally read the Daily Mail just to see what they are saying to women, but they make you terrified about being old or overweight or not pretty enough, or you haven't got the best clothes or whatever it is. And all of that, I think, is very much about, press, that the fear that the press generates to suck you in and to make you feel as though your life needs to be better in some way.
It's desperate. It's desperate. The mantra of the Daily Mail. Not joking. The mantra of the Daily Mail is leave them angry or leave them afraid.
No, is that right?
Leave them angry or leave them afraid. Now, if you think about that in the back of your mind and then read the articles, you think, has this made me angry? Has it made me afraid?
Okay. Well, that
runs through like a river.
Yeah.
like a river.
That's Trump politics, in my view.
It's let's go back to Hugh for a second. Paul Andrews is not letting it go. He's like a dog with a bone here. Edwards broke no laws. That is true. That would appear to be the case. The only law I thought there was broken, there is, I was discussing it with a lawyer of some repute.
Yeah.
You cannot take or communicate, I think it is, I was going to say transmit, but exchange or communicate photos of a lewd, extremely lewd nature of someone under 18. You can have sex when you're figure this out. You can have sex when you're 16, but you can't send a smutty picture till you're 18. Okay. That was what they thought the law was. That's why they said child and all the rest of it, because then that drags that whole new sweep into it, doesn't it?
Right.
As far as we know. So he should be left alone. Shame Hugh didn't have the money for the super injunctions that others named today. Oh yeah, these super injunctions are just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. You know what a super if you don't know what a super, I know you do, but if you don't know what a super injunction is, it's so super secret you can't actually say there's an injunction.
No.
So we could take out an injunction, say XYZ's taken out an injunction on Joe Blogs. If it's a super injunction, you cannot mention the fact that there's an injunction.
No. And I think we heard all about that, didn't we, when Ryan Giggs, the footballer, took out a super injunction about something. I can't remember what.
Who cares? It's a football. I don't care what it was.
Yeah.
I really don't care. This, by the way, this was a jolly good play. I know nothing about football. I care less about wags. I couldn't tell you anything about them. But it was a terribly entertaining play. I went with Jonathan Baz, who is joining. Jonathan Baz, the well-known theatre critic, he is joining Men's Radio and will be bringing us interesting views. He's a very, very interesting and opinionated guy. Doesn't go with the flow. Look at the cost of the Wagatha Christie case between Colleen Rooney and Rebecca Vardy. Yeah, but I kind of get that, although it was like a rape of the lock, sort of Alexander Pope type thing, like over a nothing. She didn't see it as a nothing. No. So, what the hell, she won, and that's the end of it. Right, back to Wolverhampton. The other thing that amazes me is the anonymity of sources. Our sources said, well, this is, you know this better than I, Chantal. I mean, this is just pants, isn't it? Our sources said, if your sources exist, name them. No, you can't. If you can't substantiate your sources, assume they don't exist. A close friend said, well, the close friend is always the person. It's not a close friend of, actress X, whatever it is. It is actress X. They always wrap it up with a close friend of actress, whatever.
Well, wouldn't it be so much better if the newspapers were forced to use the names of their sources? Because then actually the sources would dry up.
It's here we go, Fat Scotty. There's an irony here about the Sun and the BBC. BBC just aired a drama called Press about a fictional tabloid doing just the same as the Sun has done, life imitating art. It does completely. Back to Graham Pack. This is what we were talking about: sending lewd pictures under the age of 18. Protection of Children Act 1978, which states it is a crime to take, make, share, and possess indecent images of people under 18. An underage person cannot give their consent. Wow. Wow. Isn't that interesting? They can't give their consent.
Right.
Well, TV. We'll put this aside. As I said, stand by for another revolting revelation, which will be coming up in the next few days. Absolutely ghastly.
Oh, dear.
Absolutely ghastly. You may or may not know the person, but I'll leave it at that. I saw something which absolutely fascinated me this week. It was a 3 or 4 part documentary on Channel 4. It was called Murder in the Alps. Now, do you remember, Chantal? In 2012, I think, 2011 or 2012, a family on holiday in the Alps, on a caravan holiday, were in a lay-by and they were all shot dead. Do you remember that story?
And was it a Southeast Asian family from South London?
It was a family living in, God, where did I used to go to? Claygate. They lived in Claygate, actually.
Not Croydon.
And they were originally the parents came from Iran.
Oh, Iran.
But the kids had been here since they were like 8. So they were
Yeah.
British family. They've never solved the story, and they never solved the mystery of this shooting. This documentary, I really do recommend it. It's called Murder in the Alps. You want to see incompetence at work. If you want to see French arrogance out of central casting, the likes of which
Yeah.
I was getting so riled up sitting there on my own watching this thing. Watch it. You can get it on 4. Did I do like a repeat thing? I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah.
on Channel 4.
Actually,
Brilliantly
I've
done.
seen it, and it's a fascinating story. Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary. And the end is like, what?
Yeah.
What?
I know.
I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to spoil anything. Right. This is.
No, it's well made.
It is beautifully made. And the brother. Oh my God. Paul Andrews. No, I haven't seen this. You've talked about it. Slow Horses.
Yes.
Slow Horses. Have you talked about that?
I talked about Slow Horses when it started, which is about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then Apple TV. And the second series has come out and has been, reviewed incredibly well. I haven't continued watching it, but no, it's highly rated by those who are into it. I think if you like it, you love it.
I've not seen it. Something that's been fascinating me. I've been rewatching something, and you're going to. It's a little horrible insight into my mind. Hammer House of Horror. Yeah, I know. But bear with. It's from 1980, and there's like a really young Brian Cox. Really young.
Wow.
And the cast of this, and some of it written and directed by my late wonderful friend Francis Maguire, which made me really tear up a little bit when I saw his name coming unexpectedly. Suzanne Danielle. So naturally I took some stills, sent them to her. She looked incredible.
Amazing.
The cast in these shows, made in 1980, the cast is like a who's who. There's Peter Cushing, as I said, Brian Cox, Nicholas Ball. There's nobody small in these things. They're all like huge actors, and they're really well made. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice looking at the old cast. Listen to me, jeez,
amazing
too. But Hammer House of Horror, that's on Amazon. And
on Amazon.
On Amazon,
okay.
It's up for some reason. I don't know what it's doing there. Or if you got it on BritBox. And the other thing I've been watching, and I've forgotten how magnificent it was, is the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the original with Jeremy. Oh God, I'm embarrassing myself. Jeremy Brett. With Jeremy Brett.
Well done, well remembered.
Oh, wow, it was so good.
That was terrific.
The way they portray Holmes and I'm a Sherlock Holmes nut, but the way they portray Holmes and Watson.
And who was Watson? Was it Nigel?
Oh, come on, Russell.
Nigel.
It'll come to me. Fantastic.
Reese?
No. That was no. Nigel. Well, he does it beautifully. I saw them as a West End play, the two of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did a West End play, just a two-hander. And, being a Sherlock Holmes fanatic, I went to see it, of course. And Jeremy Brett, wow. It's very interesting. You talk about mental health. In the middle of the series, Jeremy Brett's wife died young and tragically. I think it was an accident. And I mean, it wasn't deliberate. I mean, I think something silly. I don't think it was ill health. I think something horrid happened. It was a stupid accident, as these things are.
Dear.
And you watch him change. You watch him as the series progresses. You watch this fantastic actor who got into the absolute heart and soul of Sherlock Holmes. It was just terrific. He looked like him, the mannerisms, and you can see as the series. I think there's 4 series. You see him change as his life starts to. His personal life,
How interesting. I don't remember him doing much after that, but I could be wrong.
No, he died tragically. Yeah, he died tragically.
Well,
great actor. I've been watching Rumpole of the Bailey on Thursday nights on Talking Pictures on Sky. Dates from the mid-70s. Whoa. No. I am really
And he was
old.
an actor and a half.
Leo McKern.
Leo McKern was just a god. He was such a clever actor.
That Rumpole of the Bay. Now, I got a question for you in that case. Here we are talking about shows from 1980. The Sherlock Holmes was made in the early 90s to about 1994. Can't remember what I had for breakfast. Can't remember that. Rumpole of the Bailey, mid-70s.
Yep. Gosh.
Why do we still look up to those shows as that's it? And we don't think of the stuff. No. Is it just me? Because I'm old.
I don't know. There's
everything seemed better.
Bit of nostalgia, a bit of the fact that we didn't have much else in our lives other than, a telly in the corner of the sitting room with 3 channels, and that we were watching a lot of what our parents wanted to watch. And I think that adds to the nostalgia. And there wasn't that much television, if you think about it. So what there was, everybody talked about, and it was very much part of, the DNA of every household, really. It's great. I mean, I love all those old shows.
It's funny. Emma Webb says, love Rumpole. I like them. The only way you know they're old, because you produce television, so the technical side is so important to you. The lighting looks a bit strange now. The lighting lighting the sound seems a bit clunky compared to what we get now, which is cinema quality. M says, love Rumpole and the Rumpole books. By the way, Talking Pictures TV is wonderful. Do you know that Talking Pictures TV is the 52nd biggest channel in the country? I love Talking Pictures. I'm a big fan of that.
Well, I didn't know that, but there we
funny
are.
enough, I'm working at the moment with somebody. I'm by pure chance working with someone who's very closely connected with them. I didn't know, and it came out in conversation. I said, I love Talking Pictures. You've heard of them? I said, yeah, I think they're great. I love their stuff. And here we go. This is interesting from Dave C. Talent was less generic as well.
Talent was less generic.
Interesting. I wonder if that's the case or not. What do you mean by that? Do you mean there's like just the action bloke? And did you mean? I wonder if Dave Sleep means that most people are interchangeable, where you couldn't exchange Leo McKern. Leo McKern was Leo McKern, like Brian Cox is Brian Cox now. And I don't watch it, but in Succession, everybody raves about it. You can't just swap them. Anyway, we've got 8 minutes. Have you spotted anything that any of us is worth watching at all? If not,
I've got about
20 things
I wanted to talk to you about. Well, I was going to talk to you about the strike. Clearly, the actors have gone on strike. The writers have gone on strike.
Yep.
In America so far. But there was a big premiere in London last night, the new film Oppenheimer, and all the actors got up and walked out.
Can't wait.
Because the strike had started. So there's going to be trouble at mill, as they say, and this is going to get worse before it gets better. So everything's come to a screaming standstill in Hollywood in the last 24 hours. Anyway, that aside, I thought I'd take it straight to the movie.
You predicted this, didn't you? You did say that if it goes to the actors, because it was the Screenwriters Guild, right? Yeah. And then if it spreads and spreads and spreads, then you understand why. But
so the actors
there's something really important, actually, that I just really want to just get out. In the new series, which is genius, slightly patchy, of Black Mirror, by the genius that is Charlie Brooker. Genius.
Yep.
I think I'm in awe of this man. The first one is now being replicated in real life. In other words, the Disney are saying, we can take an AI likeness of Chantal Rickards and we can put her in anything. And there's nothing she can do about it. That's what is essence. And that's what the story's about. And now it's come true. Wow.
Yeah. So there are basically two arguments. And you're right. The AI argument has actually suddenly been brought on to the original argument, which was about the streaming companies not paying enough to the talent. Yeah. Because in the old days, you were given residuals based on, you got an extra payment each time your program was aired on a second channel or a third channel or a fourth channel or a different territory. And those used to be called residuals. And those have dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. But what they're now saying is the streamers have got so big that what you got paid a tiny amount for at the beginning actually you should be paid a large amount for, because streaming covers the globe.
Yes, it does.
Whereas if you were just making something for the BBC in the old days, then, you know, you would have been paid a relatively small amount for that. Anyway,
Okay.
but the AI thing has now complicated it massively.
And it's a serious issue, by the way.
Yeah.
Very serious issue.
So, Indiana Jones, and there's a case in point, and I am going to tell you about Indiana Jones. I did see the new Indiana Jones called Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which doesn't really mean an awful lot. It's a bit of a sort of wasted title. But anyway, Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford was 81 yesterday.
Holy
in
God.
The program, in the film, you will see him as a man in his 40s. And you're going, how does that work then? And these aren't old bits of footage that they've cobbled together. They have remodeled his face to be a man 40 years younger. Wow. The story takes place in the end of the 1960s. It's it's Indiana Jones against the Nazis.
They're still going. They're still going.
It's still going. They're trying to find a piece of Archimedes something or other. It's pretty irrelevant. Yeah. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the British actress, is thrown in there for no good reason, as far as I can work out. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil it, because if you love Indiana Jones, and I think most of us do, this is the fifth and final over and out film that we will ever get with Indy and Harrison Ford. So, yeah, the original film, I think, cost 20 million and made nearly 400 million. Yeah. This film has cost 300 million, and God knows how much it's going to make. But it's the last ever one, and I think for that alone, we should all go and see it. It's not the best Indiana Jones movie on the planet. It's a bit overly reliant on car chases and set pieces, and there isn't enough music. I love the music. There isn't quite enough of it. And forget the script. The script is, it's sort of irrelevant.
The reviews are split into two camps. Yay, this is the one that the Crystal Skulls. What a pile of poo that was. I mean, shocking crap. Because I loved Indiana. I absolutely adored it. I can't tell you how much I loved it. I thought it was just sensational. And then Crystal Skulls go, oh, God, what a pile of pants. And they go, this is the film it should be. And the others are saying, what a load of woke garbage. This is just awful. And why have they destroyed?
It's not directed by Spielberg.
Yeah.
Would have been better if Spielberg had been at the helm. But anyway, go and see it. I think we sort of have to, really. And then, if you still want something to watch, Channel 4, but it's on all over the world in various guises and shapes, go and see or watch at home a TV series called Dr. Death, which I've now rattled my way all the way through, and it's based around a story about a neurosurgeon based in Texas who was not a good man. And clearly the title Dr. Death slightly gives
the clue could be in the title.
Yeah, brilliant pieces from Alec Baldwin and Christian Slater. And it's a fascinating story that started out as a podcast, a reality podcast about this crazy surgeon based in Southwest America. But it's worth watching. It's very good. The acting is good and the script is crackling away. And that's on Channel 4. It's an 8-parter. And good to download if you're flying around on a plane and you just want to watch something on the way from airport to airport. Right. So that's not bad. What else?
Cool.
Thinking
I never thought of that. Okay,
I do that all the time. Yeah. I think about that all the time. But I was also thinking about mental health. And Kanye West and his music, not really my thing. But there is an extraordinary story about Kanye and his sort of descent into being diagnosed as bipolar. And if you are interested at all in how a person of enormous stature and enormous fame goes from there to there in a very short space of time, so that now he's basically being kicked into touch by everybody. Adidas won't have anything to do with him. He stood to be president in 2020 and nobody voted for him. But it's an extraordinary story of the rise and fall of Kanye West, who is one of the most famous rappers on the planet. But that's on the BBC. It's a good documentary and worth watching. Yeah.
I have to say, I really, as much as I want to, I'm fascinated by that subject matter, the idea of just watching anything with Kanye West, and it is kind of abhorrent to me. It really is.
Yeah,
Chantal, it's been such a pleasure. Oh no, I may give it a, I may give it a little Varda. Chantal, thank you so much for joining us. The hour, I have to say, has absolutely flown by for me. I hope it's flown by for everybody else. Thank you for all your wonderful comments. Thank you for supporting us. I really appreciate all the gang at Men's Radio, the Daily Show, and all the other shows here, and on Women's. Appreciate your support. It means so much to us. Until Monday, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.